How's it going, everybody? Welcome into the Skyline Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Hartman, and joined, as always, by my good friend, my co-host from the West Coast. But well, you're still on a West Coast. It's just the West Coast of Europe, not the West Coast of the continental United States. All the way from Dublin, Nick Normand.
hmm All the way from Dublin, still repping my Steelers gear as per usual. You've gotten used to me doing that. But at least I fit in it around here wearing my Steelers garb because the Steelers have taken over Dublin, man. The Steelers fans all over the place. Game against the Vikings this Sunday. I'm super stoked to be here. Dude, I got tickets to this game. They're pricey. They were like $300, but it's fourth row in the stadium,
No way.
which I'm just fired up about that. The game should be lit. Just tons of Steelers fans. If they play Renegade, the place is going to go crazy. First game in Dublin ever regular season. Steelers are going to show out lots of stuff going on. Going to be going to a tailgate after this that the Steelers are putting on. Super excited though, man. Not on the West Coast this week, but at a Steelers game all the way from Dublin. How are you doing, Jack?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I had a great sports weekend last week. So Syracuse
Mm-hmm.
goes to Death Valley and beats Clemson, and
Badly too.
beats them bad. The score it was farther separated than the score shows. Unfortunate though that they lost quarterback Steve Angeli for the year with a torn Achilles. But Ricky Collins came in and threw a touchdown pass. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, and then on Sunday, my favorite disc golfer, Paul Macbeth, won a big tournament, so that was pretty cool getting to watch that. And then on Monday night, Detroit goes to Baltimore, and it's another game that the score does not reflect how lopsided that game really was. Um, yeah, Detroit just man, they showed up and they showed out. I think especially, I mean, I was saying this after the Bears game, but especially now, I think we don't need to worry about the offense anymore. That first week against the Packers was just hey, this is new. But they have quickly adjusted. So yeah, it's 7 sacks. They sacked Lamar Jackson 7 times in that game. Wild stuff. So I'm on a high. We'll see what happens this week for my teams and my guys. But yeah, no, it's been good. It's been good. And so we're gonna get right into it here. Our week 3 reaction, and look ahead to week 4. And so as we've done the last couple weeks, we'll go through things we were impressed by, things we're concerned about, and then some games that sort of correspond with what we talk about heading here into week 4. And so I'll get us started here, man. Nick, the thing that I think I'm the most impressed by, and I think it's finally time to give them their flowers, is the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts, they've started the season 3-0. Their wins have been over the Dolphins, the Broncos, and the Titans. But I mean, it hasn't been like really weak wins. They beat the Dolphins week 1 33-8. They didn't punt or commit a turnover. They beat the Broncos 29-28 week 2, but we do think that the Broncos are a good team and are definitely better than their record shows. And then they beat the Titans on the road 41-20. I mean, this Colts team, especially this Colts offense, has been shocking to say the least. They have wow, like I mean, and to think that all of it's happening with Daniel Jones, right? To think that Daniel Jones is making a Baker Mayfield resurgence or a Sam Darnold resurgence, I think that's just really cool to see. I need to eat crow about Daniel Jones because I mean seriously, like I have been convinced, for years that he's just not a starting quarterback in the NFL. And you know what? I think on one hand, he hasn't been a starting quarterback in the NFL or played well enough to be one until this year. But on the other hand, this doesn't just happen all in one off season, So really, I'm really impressed by the Colts. They've got the lead there in the division, and they still have they don't have an easy schedule, but they don't have a super difficult one either. You know, when I look at their schedule moving on, they've got the Rams this week. They have to play the Chargers on the road. They have to play the Steelers on the road, the Chiefs on the road. That's really it. 49ers at home at the end of the season, but who knows? I mean, they might not have a roster to field. The 49ers might at that point of the year. So, like, they still have a lot of very winnable games left, and could not just win the AFC South, but potentially be, you know, a 2 or a 3 seed if they keep playing this way.
I hear you there, Jack. If somebody told me before the season started after 3 weeks that the Houston Texans will be behind the leader of the AFC South 3 games to 0, I would be shocked. The Texans being 0-3 and the Colts being 3-0, and the way that it's looked has just been nuts. Crazy, crazy stuff from the Colts coming out this year.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm impressed by the Colts this week, by their body of work so far. Nick, how about you? What has impressed you so far this year?
So there have been a lot of things that have been impressive to me, at least for the last couple of weeks. It's been mighty impressive. I'm going to give the Panthers some flowers, their defense particularly. They've just been dreadful the last couple of years. Bryce Young has not had any support from his defense, and they pitched a shutout over the Falcons. The Falcons, who have offensive weapons, who have a line that we like, their offensive line's good. Bijan's good. Algiers good. London's good. Pitts might not be what we thought he was going to be, but he's still a good contributor. Made Penix look awful, and I think the Panthers deserve their flowers. Anybody who said, oh yeah, I predicted that the Panthers would annihilate the Falcons, I'm just going to call you a liar. I don't think anyone expected this. It was very impressive. And how it looked, just super impressive to shut down an offense that hasn't been great this year, but hasn't looked this bad even under the Desmond Ritter years. Like, it looked bad, but it wasn't 30-0. Like, it was just dreadful. So got to give the Panthers their flowers. They were impressive. Bryce Young really needs to turn it up and really be able to kind of continue on what he was doing last year. But I got to give the defense the credit. Even if the Panthers aren't going to be good, the defense was very impressive this week.
Yeah, no, that defense looked dominant there. And, you know, like, Bryce Young, I want it to work for him. I really do. Like, I want him to be successful. I want him to not go down as one of the biggest busts in NFL history. And I want to be able to blame the Panthers organization for what's happened to him. But at the same time, like, he does stuff, man. Like, his despite them winning 30-0, his stat line from this last week was 16 of 24 for 121 yards. That's it. No touchdowns. No picks, but no touchdowns. He had a QBR of 70.1. You know, like, I want it to be good. I want it to be good. I thought getting him Tet McMillan was gonna make a really, really big difference. Um, and it just isn't quite, isn't quite what we're hoping to see. Um, so, we'll see how things go for the Panthers, but definitely I agree with you. Need to give them their props for this last week. All right, moving on. We're going quick today, but it's because Nick is in a pub in Dublin and we want him to get to enjoy everything that Dublin has to offer. Moving on, Nick, tell me what you are concerned about. Tell me what made you nervous this last week.
So it made me nervous. Also, birthed us one of the best memes so far of this season. I don't know if you've seen the clip; it's been circulating a bunch. But that will be the Packers' offensive line just getting demolished by Myles Garrett and the Browns. The clip I'm obviously talking about, I'm sure you've heard the audio clip. The left tackle for the Packers getting beat on an inside move just easily by Myles Garrett, just teleporting around him, didn't even get a hand on him. And he just yells, "Jordan, run!" And Jordan Love just has to book it. You can't be having that, even if Myles Garrett's the best edge rusher in the league. And I'll give him that because I think TJ Watt's taken a step back, and that's something that, like, Steelers fans, I think, are low-key concerned about. But he bounced back this week. He was solid this week. But Myles Garrett, looks like the best edge rusher in the league, and you'd have something to say with Aiden Hutchinson about that, of course. But Myles Garrett dragging that Browns team to beating a very impressive Packers team. I think if you actually look at that Packers offensive line, that they didn't draft a lot of guys high that are playing at that high end level. Like they drafted an offensive tackle out of Arizona 2 drafts ago, and he struggled. And I don't even know that he's starting at this point. I believe he is in Morgan. And I just think that Packers O line could be their undoing if this Packers team doesn't reach the ceiling that I think they could possibly reach. I think they've looked amazing this year, but that loss to the Browns showed something in that offensive line that I think could really be a concern and could be why they don't make it as far as they do in the NFC.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think we see every year what Jim Schwartz does with the Browns defense is always impressive. But even still, if the Packers are going to be what we think they can be, you don't only score 10 points against the Cleveland Browns, no matter where you're playing, and you don't lose to them 13 to 10 on a day like that. Like that's one of those that, that's one of those games that, like, looking back so far through the first 3 weeks of the season, yes, Green Bay beat Detroit week 1, but then Detroit bounced back, destroyed the Bears, and then went on the road and beat Baltimore. And you're like, yes, Green Bay beat Detroit week 1, but can we really say through a 3-week body of work, oh, Green Bay is better than Detroit? I'm not going to answer that because I'll be biased when I answer that question. But still, that's the type of loss that makes you like go like, whoa, hold on a minute. Um, very uncharacteristic, very, I think it just shows and every year we're talking about how young the Packers are, and it's like, how do they keep staying? Like, how can we keep talking about them? Like, oh my gosh, they're such a young team. They have things they need to work out 4 years in a row before it's like, okay, actually, no, it's not young, it's not youth, it's immaturity, and not not immaturity that they'll grow out of, but just this is what they are. Um, so I think that's an interesting question that needs to get brought up with Green Bay. But I agree with you. That offensive line looked very, very concerning. Um, I'm just in general, the Packers offense has been like a little iffy so far this season. They scored 27 against the Lions, they scored 27 against the Commanders, and then 10 versus the Browns. Like 27 points in a game is not oh, we scored enough that we should win this game type type score. You scored enough that if you have a capable defense you should win that game, which they showed against the Lions and the Commanders. But it's not like they didn't eclipse 30, right? When I feel like in the NFL, once you eclipse 30, it's like, okay, it's the reason why we were talking so much about how many games the Bengals lost yet last year, that Joe Burrow led the offense to score 31 points or whatever, because that's typically the threshold. If you score this much, you're gonna have a strong winning percentage. So yeah, so the Packers defense has looked good. Packers offense, though, little concerning. There were also concerns about Matthew Golden running out of bounds like way early on a pass play that he thought he could easily get much farther down the field. So the Packers have things to work out on the offensive end for sure, for sure. All right, thing that concerned me this week. Thing that concerned me this week. I've got two teams that concerned me this week. I'm going to go with one of them, and that team is the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens so far this year are 1-2. They lost in a shootout to the Bills. They destroyed the Browns. They lost to the Lions. So you could say, well, like they played good teams. They beat the team they were supposed to, and they lost to a good to a couple of good teams. However, it is the way that they've lost the two games that they've lost to. One, it's the fact that they've lost those games at all. I think we've seen teams before that go 11-5, or now that would be 11-6. You're like, oh well, they're a good team, they're a playoff team, they're a competitor, they're a contender. But then you look at the games that they lost, it's like, yeah, but you won all of the games against the teams under 500 and you lost all of the games against teams above 500. And so, while it's early, it's still overreaction time in the NFL. That's what we've seen with Baltimore. They lost to the Bills, who were, it's always the Ravens, the Bills, and the Chiefs are the teams competitive in the AFC. Now, it's not that way this year, but in the past, it's always been those two. They lose to the Bills. Playing the Chiefs this week, same thing might happen. They lose to the Lions, a team that is one of the three that we talk about as the most altogether and competitive in the NFC. If you're going to lose against the teams that are going to be at the top of the conference, then that sort of gives us what your ceiling is, right? Which is we're looking, first, maybe second weekend of the playoffs, if that's the trend that keeps going. Also, I mean, I watched the whole game, obviously. The Ravens, so Lamar Jackson, 21 of 27 for 288 yards and 3 touchdowns. Fine. That's solid. Did you look at their rushing numbers? Derrick Henry, 12 carries for 50 yards. He had a touchdown. He also had a costly fumble. Lamar Jackson, 7 carries for 35 yards. One, they only ran the ball 19 times. Two, they only had 85 rushing yards. What is the thing that we have said it has happened the last 3 years now that the reason the Ravens have fallen off? Because they stop running the football. They have Lamar Jackson, the best running quarterback in NFL history. They have Derrick Henry, statistically one of the best running backs to ever play the game. NFL, college, high school. He dominates everywhere he goes. And so I am concerned about the Ravens. One, that they keep losing to the teams that, if you want to be competitive, you need to be beating them. And two, they're not running the ball well. Because while Lamar Jackson has the best QBR, best passer rating in NFL history, the longer that you rely on him to throw the ball, the more likely he is to make a mistake. That goes for any quarterback at any level. The knock on Kyle McCord, my quarterback for Syracuse last year, was all the interceptions. He also broke the ACC single season yard record and led the nation in yards because of how often they threw the ball. The more times the ball goes in the air, the more likely it is to get intercepted. So, if that is the math, if that's the way it works, and they're not running the ball more than, that. They threw the ball about 30 times a game, they ran the ball about 20 times a game. As opposed to the Lions, threw the ball 28 times a game, 28 times in the game, ran the ball 38 times in the game, right? The Lions are like, we've got the best running back tandem in the NFL. We're going to let them eat, And so I'm concerned that now in the past we've seen the Ravens fall into this trap in the playoffs. What concerns me is that we just saw it in week 3, right? And so I think they've got a game this week against the Chiefs. It's a must win for both of those teams, man. It is a must win for both of those teams because I think more so for the Ravens, because if the Ravens lose it, they now no longer have a tiebreaker against the Bills and against the Chiefs. So I think it is a must win for them this weekend, but it's a must win for the Chiefs. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see. Okay, does this propel them on an upward trajectory? And does the loser, I mean, how bad does this sort of spiral out?
Hmm. I hear you there. I think the concern with the Ravens too, that I think's a little overstated that I've heard with the media, is that their defense got ran over, which they did. Detroit's offense obviously is great, and their running game's one of the best in the NFL, if not the best. But they got absolutely ran over. David Montgomery, huge 70-plus yard run. And Montgomery's not even normally that guy. That's normally Gibbs' role to break out those long runs.
Right.
But to be just ran over, I think it's a little bit overstated because Madubuike wasn't playing. And I think that tandem of him as well as the UConn tackle, who I'm blanking on his name right now, but I really like him as a player. I think that tandem of having both of them on the middle, they just do such good work together, stopping the run and pass rushing, that not having one of them kind of just made it far less effective to be able to stop those A-gap runs. And so that's kind of where I put that on the Ravens defense, and I get it why. But my thing with the Ravens offense is that they should be playing more like the Eagles do, and the Eagles should be playing more like they do. The Eagles have the weapons over the top in Devonta Smith and in A.J. Brown that they should be passing the ball like Lamar Jackson does. And then that you have the Eagles who run the ball all the time, all the time, all the time. Jalen Hurts relies on his legs. Saquon Barkley's obviously very good. But the threat of Saquon and Jalen Hurts is not the same as Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. When you have the option of Derrick Henry goes that way, Lamar Jackson goes that way, you lose either way every time. And when they commit to that, you have 7-yard run that way, 9-yard run that way, time and time and time again. That's not quite the same threat that you have with the Eagles, where you have Saquon able to bust big runs. But Jalen Hurts isn't a threat necessarily on a consistent, like 10 play a game basis to take it immediately from the play. He's more scrambling, breaking out and running after the play breaks down or after he makes his first or second read. And that's, I think, a little bit where the Eagles and the Ravens have it flipped right now, where I just want the Eagles to air it out like they were able to against the Rams when they were down. And I agree with you, though, that the Ravens, like, when they play a team and they commit to the running game, you get a game like last year's Bills game or this year's Bills game on offense where they're just unstoppable, where Derrick Henry's busting a massive run. Lamar Jackson's busting 3 runs where he's not getting tackled. He's able to slide whenever he wants and bust 10-yard runs all the time. And so I think that that way of efficient offense is just unstoppable, and I don't get why they just stick with that all the time. I haven't seen anybody stop that really incredibly well at all, I think. And so I agree with you there that there are concerns, but the Ravens are smart enough, well coached enough, have enough talent to be able to figure it out, I would think.
Yeah. I think the big thing that raises eyebrows with the Ravens this year so far, or at least in this game, is when Mike Tomlin took over the Steelers in his introductory press conference, very famously, he was like, "We're going to run the ball and we're going to stop the run." The Ravens, since in our entire lifetime, have also been that team. We're going to run the ball, we're going to stop the run. They ran the ball 19 times for 85 yards in this game. The Lions ran the ball 38 times for 224 yards in this game. The Ravens threw the ball 28 times. The Lions threw the ball 28 times. The Ravens' total yardage was about 310, and the Lions' total yardage was 420. Like, that shows your offense was not as efficient as the Lions' offense, and your defense was not as good as the Lions' defense. If you can't win one of those 2 phases of the game, you're not going to win. Like that's just the way it goes. So, all right, Nick, tell me about a game that you're excited to see this week.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know. You're obviously a bigger college football fan than I am, but there's been a college football meme that's been floating around as well with Arch Manning in Texas playing Sam Houston State this last week, where Arch Manning obviously struggled against Ohio State, but he's looked better and better and had his like get right game. I don't know if you've seen the image, but it implies something a little bit interesting there against Sam Houston State. That meme, I think, also completely applies to the Cowboys defense. They have been a get-right defense the last couple of weeks, and I think that Jordan Love and the Packers should tear through them like they're wet tissue paper. I think that this should be a Jordan Love trying to get his MVP campaign on track kind of game against this Cowboys defense. I think there's no reason why he shouldn't throw for at minimum 250 yards. I think they should be able to easily score 25, 30, 35 plus points in this game. I think that the Packers, after losing to that Browns team, after they were trying to proclaim themselves, after beating Washington, after beating a Detroit team that clearly now looks like they're back on track to being who they were, I think that this Packers team should be able to destroy the Cowboys, at least offense to defense. And if they don't, that's going to be really concerning to me. So I'm looking at Jordan Love and the Packers offense getting really right here in this game this week.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I think there is certainly reason to be concerned about the Packers if this game looks more like the Browns game than say the Lions game. Because yeah, this is a Cowboys team that, like, I mean, they couldn't like they couldn't stop a bike with a brick wall. Like, they seriously, like, they they can't they can't do anything. Their one win came in overtime against the Giants, and they let basically, because of them, Russell Wilson got to play one more game. Like, seriously, because of the Cowboys defense, Russell Wilson got benched after week 3, not after week 2. And that is sad enough. Um, so yeah, so no, I agree with you. I think this has to be a get right game for the Packers. Especially with Detroit playing Cleveland this week. Which should be a win. I'd like to think that that's going to be a win for them. We'll see. They just beat the Packers, but I'd like to think that's going to be a win for them. And at that point, then the Packers are a game back, despite their win over Detroit, in week 1. So, one of the games that I'm really interested in this week is Eagles Bucks. Both teams are undefeated and at the top of the NFC standings right now. This game is in Tampa, and the weird thing about the Eagles is, since Tom Brady has retired, the Eagles have struggled against the Bucks. It's weird. It doesn't make sense, but they have. Uh they lost to the Bucks in the regular season last year or 2 years ago.
Last year, it was
Last
week
year.
4. I think that might have been the last game that the Eagles lost when Jalen Hurts played the whole game. Because that was
Yeah.
that game that they lost 24-10 or something funky like
Yeah,
that
yeah, it
in
was
Tampa
weird.
Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they lose that game. Um, the Jason Kelsey's last game in the NFL was the wild card loss to Tampa Bay for the Eagles, and that was the year that they started like 10-0 and then proceeded to like really fall off a cliff for the back half of the season. So I'm really intrigued by this one. This is a Tampa Bay team that I was very high on. I think if Tampa Bay wins this game, I think it would be appropriate to say that they are at the top of the NFC, that they are clearly contenders, they're not pretenders, and that they have a legitimate case to be made to be, considered the best team in the NFC right now. They've won on game-winning drives the last 3 weeks. Some of them have been really good wins in game-winning drives. Others haven't. But they've still won, and this is going to be their toughest task yet. This game here against the Eagles, and if they win it, then it's another test passed for them before getting into November and through the first quarter of the season.
Mhm. I'm there with you, Jack. I'm really concerned about this Bucks offensive line with how injured they've been. Because Godicke's been out, and then who was it? They have another
Worse.
off. Wirfs he's been out, but then they had another offensive lineman who went on IR, who I'm blanking on. Barton's been healthy, but I'm blanking on who the guard was. Oh, Mock, the one. He was North Dakota State, I believe. But they've been super injured on that offensive line. So if Jalen Carter can take advantage, Nolan Smith's out and he's on IR now. So the Eagles aren't at full capacity with their pass rush. But I think Baker Mayfield, he's going to have to be throwing quick, I think, because he could get killed in this game if the D line really plays like they should with the Eagles against this offensive line there.
Yeah, no, definitely. Wirfs is expected to play this week, so
Okay.
that would be a good get back for them, especially having your left tackle, your stalwart of your offensive line. So we'll see about that. Nick, give me another game, a game that is another one that you're interested in, um, outside of the one that you're currently in another country for.
Of course, of course. I don't really want to talk that much about the Steelers game, actually, just because I'm very concerned for my Steelers. They seem to lose games like this overseas. They come over really late, and so they get really jet lagged, and it's a struggle. But I'm going to be talking about Ravens Chiefs. I just think if you look at this matchup where these teams are at, both teams are 1-2. The loser of this game is going to be 1-3. And if the Chiefs go to 1-3 in their division, I think their hopes are just shot for winning the division if they aren't already with the Chargers looking how they've been. And if the Ravens go 1-3, I think they'd actually be able to bounce back from it easier than the Chiefs would, just because the division's much easier hypothetically. Or the Steelers are solid, but it's the Steelers. They're 500 plus or minus sort of team. They're a 9-10 win team. But the Bengals without Browning, you have winnable games there. The Browns with Joe Flacco / Shador / the whole mess of quarterbacks there, that's winnable. But the Chiefs' division is just much harder, I think, right now than this version of the AFC North. And so I think the Ravens really need to establish themselves. They would be in a terrible spot as far as getting the 1 seed or moving up the seeds with a loss to the Bills and a loss to the Chiefs, as you said earlier. And I think just a bounce back game for this Ravens team, who the Ravens are angrier because the Ravens just lost to a good Detroit team, but they lost. And it was the first big loss, I think, to an NFC team that Lamar's had in a long time because his record against the NFC is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think Lamar's going to want to get his get back, and I think that the Chiefs really need this win to be able to stay afloat as far as their actual seeding purposes, short of wins, to be able to potentially win the division. So I think this game is going to be one of those linchpin games when we look at it at the end of the year, being like, if this game flipped, what would have happened? And so I think that's just a super critical game outside of the stud QBs that we love to see them match up whenever we can.
Yeah, totally agree. Let's see. I want to pull up and see what happens after this week for these teams. Okay, so after this week for Baltimore, they host the Texans, they host the Rams, they host the Bears, and they go to Miami. That's their October. Okay, so winnable games, but also losable games there. The Chiefs, after this game, what's their October look like? Their October at Jacksonville, hosting Detroit, hosting the Raiders, hosting the Commanders. And the hosting the Commanders Monday Night Football last week of October. Hopefully Jaden Daniels is back at that point. So I think both of these teams, even if they lose this week, they have some winnable games over the next few weeks. But also, I don't see any of those gimme games yet. I don't see any of those gimme games on the schedule, right? Like, especially for the loser, because then it's like, okay, well, you're like kind of bad actually, right? Like, if the Chiefs lose this game, they will be 1-3. Jacksonville this week is playing against San Francisco. That might be an interesting game, actually. If they win that one, Jacksonville then is kind of a better team, right? And so yeah, no, so I agree with you. I think it's a very, very interesting game that can set both of these teams, one on a much better trajectory and one on a much, much worse trajectory, depending on what happens. Game that I'm interested in, one of the teams that I'm concerned by, and I talked about the Ravens, and then you picked Ravens Chiefs, and so the team that I didn't talk about was the New England Patriots. We had a lot of high hopes for this Patriots squad going into this year. They're 1-2 so far. Again, we're 3 weeks in. Like it's still very, very early in the season. The week 1 loss to the Raiders was surprising. Then they beat the Dolphins. They lose last week to the Steelers because they turned the ball over 5 times, I think. Was that right? 5 times. Drake May
Four
threw one
fumbles.
pick, and there were four
Four
fumbles.
fumbles.
Four
Insane.
fumbles. And yet they only lost by a touchdown, which I think says more like a little yikesies about your Steelers than like, oh well, look how good they are because they only lost by a touchdown and turned the ball over 5 times. But regardless, they play the Panthers this week at home. It's a 1 p.m. They're both 1-2. Literally, if you live anywhere outside of New England, you will not be seeing this game because why on earth would they put it on? That said, Carolina coming off a really big high, New England coming off a real disappointment. If New England can't come out hot and with their foot on the gas, if they lose this game, then we might need to totally rethink how we feel about this New England Patriots team. We were talking during the offseason that this was a team that that would be competing for a wild card spot. I had them as the second best team in the AFC East, and I thought that it wasn't close. Um, but that said, like, I basically thought the Bills won't be able to walk through the AFC East because of the Patriots this year. I think if the Patriots lose this game, then it'll be safe to say the Bills will walk their way through through the division this year, and like we'll probably have it locked up by like week 12. Like seriously. Um, so I am concerned about this Patriots team. They have to win this game. They have to control the ball and take care of the ball. If they do that, and if they win and they look good, then it'll be okay. Good, crisis averted. But I'm concerned about this Patriots team playing against a Panthers team that really has nothing to lose. Like going into this year, we knew that they were not going to be a great team. They played like they had nothing to lose last week against the Falcons. And if they do it again here this week, then they might pull off the upset here and beat the Patriots at home.
I hear you there, Jack. I just be really putting a lot of money, I think, this week on the Patriots. I think Mike Vrabel, as far as a coach after the loss, is a tremendous coach. I just think that with the Panthers coming off of the high that they were on, and the Patriots coming off of the low of such a winnable game, we're watching that game. It was lopsided yards wise, times of possession wise, where the Steelers won on the critical plays, on the red zone sort of plays, on the turnover type of plays. But the Patriots were just moving the ball, converting third downs and fourth downs at will. Where I believe during the game, if you consider third downs and fourth downs together, that the Patriots converted something like 12 out of 14 downs, where the Steelers only stopped them and like forced them to punt twice the entire
Yeah.
game, which is just gross against a Patriots offense that is wholly not particularly talented, I think we will both say.
Yeah.
I'd put the house on the Patriots this week, and I just feel like, man, Mike Tomlin, apparently previous to that game that the Steelers beat the Patriots, showed a whole film session on just looking at how loose the Patriots were with the football. And that's why Mike Tomlin's a great coach. If he coached them specifically saying, look at how loose they are with the ball, hit out those balls, force them to fumble, look at how terribly they are at keeping the ball secure, and then proceed to do it 4 times, that's good coaching. That's why he wins these voodoo magic sort of games. But I think Mike Vrabel's a great coach, too, who's going to be able to strike back with some tremendous coaching against a Panthers team that I think's in the same tier as this Patriots team, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so that'll be a good one. Well, Nick, enjoy your time across the pond. Enjoy the game this week. And yeah, we were able to make this work, so hopefully we'll be back next week with our recap of week 4, and we'll open it up a little bit more for Nick to tell us about the experience in Dublin. Because yeah, first NFL regular season game. Well, I guess that means first NFL game period in Dublin,
No,
Ireland.
they've played a preseason game here apparently back in the day.
Oh, okay,
So that's why I said regular season game.
gotcha,
Not a
gotcha.
playoff game, clearly.
Well, yeah, I'd be like, wow. Could you imagine someday like Super Bowls abroad?
I think that will be sick. In Paris or London or Sao Paulo, I think having a Super Bowl there, Tokyo, I think that will be dope, man.
I think it would be cool. All right. Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for watching, for tuning in. A little shorter episode for you guys this week, so Nick can go enjoy his time. But yeah, it's been real. It's been fun. Enjoy the games this week, and we'll talk soon.